by changing we changed it from numeric 2 decimal to 1 decimal. And you'll notice that if I change 0, so when I hit 0, when I click away from it, this will go to a 2 decimal place, or to a 0 decimal place item. Okay. So the next concept that we were going to talk about is sorting, okay, and multiple sorts. And then we're also going to talk about how you subtotal on the grid. We're going to talk about customizing your toolbar. And you customize your command tab. Okay, to sort a column, all you do is click on the column. You'll notice that there's a faint up arrow there. If I click on it again, it'll sort it in the opposite direction. Now I can do multiple subsorts by holding my Alt and Shift down, and you'll notice that now I've got a subtotaling concept going on here and here. So if I click on away from that, if I don't hold my Alt Shift key down and click on another column, I'll get this concept going on. So now what I want to do is I'm going to hold my Alt Shift key down, and I'm going to sort by my contract amount, and as I would be to drag the column up into the margin. Okay, so now let's look at the city of Alamosa. I'm going to hold my Alt Shift key down, and I'm going to click on this column, and these numbers are changing. Okay. All right. So now filtering. If I want to type city of Alamosa, where I can hold my Alt key down and hit down arrow, and I can just pick the city of Alamosa, and then we're sorting there. Okay. Now, if I hold my Alt Shift key down, I can actually go to as many sorts as I want. Okay. You'll notice that those faint up and down arrows are all over the place now, and they're in the sequence: primary, secondary, third, fourth, fifth sort. Okay. I can do multiple subsorts if I want. Let's say I want to do by customer and then by project manager. And I can just keep going if I want. Okay, I can change my order of my sorts as well. So now PM, then customer, and you'll notice that I'll get subtotals here. Okay. So we're back over here, and we did the sorting and multiple sorts, and then we did the subtotaling. Okay, and then we also did filtering, so let's add that in there. And then on the multiple sorts, you'll have to hold your Alt Shift key down and click on the columns. Now, one thing that can happen when you're sorting, one other thing on this filter, if I click this little X on the right, it'll clear my filter. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring the sorting. I'm sorting by customer. I click Add. It's going to add. It's adding right here, and the reason it added right here is because it's still sorting by customer. There's a concept called clear sort keys or clear sorts, and I don't have that in my context menu. We're generally trying to put those in the context menu, and it is in a newer version of this grid that will get released at some point, and it does have it in it. But we're going to go ahead and turn on our clear sort keys, and if any of you are using the .NET time card entry, you're very familiar with this trick. So when you add, and it adds in the middle of your grid, and you're not really sure how it's going there, it's because it's sorting. We click clear sort key, and it's going to take you right to the bottom for the new job. Okay, so let's go back over here and so we had the filter concept. And clear filters. So the filtering is at the top row, just below the column headers. Okay, so one thing to note on your customer in this grid, you can add your customer on the fly, just like you can add them in the old product. It's a little different, but let's say it's so we want to add City of Highlands Ranch. It's actually going to ask us for something first. It wants to know, we'll just say HR for Highlands Ranch. Okay, it's going to, and the dash is a character that we use in this grid as a separator. Usually it's the underscore, but here's the dash. Okay, so now we just added Highlands Ranch, City of Alamosa, or City of Highlands Ranch. Okay, so if we come over here to the customer list, we'll see HR and then City of Highlands Ranch. And so I did it in the opposite order of what I should have done. So I should have said and it'll actually adhere to the format that you want in the system. So if you tell the system to put the name first and then the ID second, it's going to adhere to that concept. Okay? So you can add customers on the fly. Now, if you, on the Customize and Toolbar tab, if I right-click on any of these icons, I get this Customize icon. Now, you'll notice I have Standard and View. Those are the icon trays. If I uncheck one, it goes away. So if I uncheck the other one will go away. So that's kind of what those are. If I go to Customize, you'll notice I get this Customize dialog, and I've got 3 tabs. I've got a Toolbars tab, I've got a Commands tab, and I've got an Options tab. And the toolbars are this same concept that we just dealt with, right? We can also add toolbars. Dialog up, we can actually drag icons around between toolbars, okay? We can turn them off, and we can delete toolbars here too, okay? So that's how you manipulate your toolbars. The commands are here, and you have all these icons. You can basically drag your icons up and on and off the grid that way. Okay. So let's say you want your AR history. Let's say your AR history is not up there and you want it up there. You can drag it onto the screen, click close, click AR history, and now you've got your AR history here. Highlight your job, click AR history, and it'll pull up the invoices. This drop down, you can pull up, let's say you want to print it in the landscape format. That's our standard one. And click print, and it'll go ahead and pull it up in that format. Okay. This is a little bit different dialog than the other .NET or the Crystal Reports dialog, in that you do have a centralized email address concept that you can do. Okay, so if I say email it, click OK, it'll bring up an email dialog, and I click to, and these are the actual email addresses in the system under the vendors and customers. Okay, and I think the employees might be in there as well. And it will send it through your Outlook Express or Outlook, either one. There's access to the other grids from here as well if you turn them on and off. For example, we want to go to our progress billing on this golden job. I can do that. And I don't know if any of you use the dialog, this progress billing. How many of you use it? I know quite a few people do use it, but this is really kind of a superior concept to our old progress billing dialog. Okay, it's more of a spreadsheet concept, and it's got all your view concepts. You can do your drop downs on your reports and print your forms before and after. If you want, after you post it, you would click AR history. There's a billing later on. Okay. So we're just trying to get the mechanics of the grid down, and we're going to recap what we've done, the additional items we added to that. So we basically showed you how you could turn on and off your toolbars and how you can add and remove your columns or your icons. The icons are in categories. And then you also have an options tab, and that options tab gives you some additional functionality, like always show full menus, large icons, a little bit smaller icons. So just some different things you can play with. Also, the keyboard shortcuts are here too, so if I want cancel, there's no shortcut there, but save is Control-S, and cancel, you could say, you assign it here. Let's say Control-X would be cancel maybe. Okay. Control-X, and I click assign for it to move over to the left-hand side. Okay. So that's how you'd set your icons or your keyboard shortcuts. So our commands, let's see, this is the commands tab. There's the toolbar tab, the commands tab, and the options tab. And so we're referring to those here in our Google Doc. Customize, and then toolbar tab, commands tab, and our options tab. Another concept we can do is we can rename icons. And we rename icons by you actually have to have this dialog up, the customized dialog. You right-click, let's say progress billing, we want to call it schedule of values. Okay, so then I click away from it, it's called schedule of values. If I click on close here and I click on this icon, now this grid is named progress billing, so if I want to change the grid to match schedule of values, I do that under utilities, grid views, or form management grid views, and I would come over to the progress billing, which is what I had it named, and I would change it to schedule of values. Okay, click done, and I think we have to exit all of the .NET grids for it to recognize the change. No, you don't. It changed it just by exiting the schedule of values grid. So that's how you would change the name on the grid, the header on the grid, which is a little bit different than changing the name on the icon. Okay, so they're changed in different locations, but it's a way for you to manipulate your naming conventions. Okay, so we're in this series, in this webinar, we're going to also talk about all the different icons and what they mean. But what we wanted to do in this webinar is just identify how you get around in the grid and how you manipulate the grid, how you set up your views, that kind of thing. So one thing you can bring up, if you do your printing from this side, We have a version that this is not the case, but if you print your on-demand dashboard reports from this grid, the dashboard reports didn't work very well in the older version that we have here. It would not, right, justify those numbers. We have a newer version that, we have a lot of details that we've cleaned up, and we still have some to clean up, but the newer version actually doesn't have that, and we'll release that hopefully in the next month or two. We have some people on beta test on it now. The newer version of these grids, you get a menu system. It's just a little different. So, and you're not so heavily reliant on the icons. So, but anyway, so if I go into, for example, the bid item grid, I get the same concepts. I have my views, and I can set up different views for different functions. A view is a collection of columns that I have turned on or off. If I subtotal in my view, if I go to a different link, if I come back to the original one, it's going to have the subtotals I left it with. So it remembers where you were at before. Another concept with the .NET is if I change the size of my grid and save it, it remembers the size of my grid. So if I come back into that again, the size and the location. So if you have two monitors and you put one over on a different monitor, it's going to remember that it was on a different monitor, which means sometimes if you go back to one monitor, you might not see where it's at. Or you go over to a different computer and you open it and you say, well, where'd it go? Well, it's trying to put it on a different monitor that you don't have. So what you can do is you can say move, and actually if there's two monitors, it'll say move right and move left. So you would say over here, you'd be able to say move left and move right, that kind of thing. And then that you'll be able to get it over to where you can see it. Okay. So there's a lot of workflow in the .NET job list, and people will keep track of lots of different concepts in there. If we go over to the bid item grid, we can start to show some concepts that we have here. Depending on what your view consists of, you can facilitate different things you want to get done. For example, on who you're using, and you create your commitments here. Okay, we'll go through that in a little more detail. But so I'll add a row, and I'll say, just assign anything to it. Demolition, I'll say subs. And I'll say Rocky Mountain Excavating. I'm going to do a subcontract for $30,000. Let's say my budget was $30,000, and I bid the job not really knowing what I could get it for, and I got it out for $28,000. Okay, so this buyout column really relates to what you want the purchase order or subcontract to say. For subs, it will create a subcontract when you click Create Commitment, and all the others it'll create a purchase order. So when I click that Create Commitment, it's actually going to create my transaction. So here we've got a commitment column, right? The actual amount or the costs that have come in on that commitment, right? Now another column you might see on your Create Commitments would be a retention column. So if you are a general contractor and you need to you want to get your subcontracts in here, and you have retention on your subs, you're going to want to turn that on. So if I would have put 10% in there and created it, it would have placed 10% on it. Now if I come back over here, let's see, we were in the Monte Vista job. I'll go into the Monte Vista job. Actually, I'm going to go customer list, Monte Vista job, and go over to my PO subcontracts and click refresh. There's my Rocky Mountain Excavating, the $28,000. If I forget to do it, I need to do it here. Just double click on it and put your retention. I'll go to AP and customize that to turn on the purchase orders. So let's say they progress billed me $10,000. Okay. Over in my bid item grid, if I click refresh, I'm going to get that $10,000 number coming in. So now I have actual costs that have come in. So if we come over here to the job list and we print our dashboard report for that, and we click on our commitment column, we're going to get that detail. There's the 28,000, there's the 10,000 AP invoice that came in on it. If I pull up my billing commitment analysis on the Monte Vista job, there's my 28,000 from Rocky Mountain. I have 18,000 left. A $10,000 invoice came in. If I click on the 28,000, it identifies my subcontract, my invoices that have come in. If there are multiple, it'll itemize my payments, check numbers, and what's left. Okay. So if I click on this variance column on that dashboard, it gives me a job status grid. So showing my commitments, let's see. Okay. Let's go back over here. Okay, now on the units, if you do, if it's purchase orders, you may have to put units, and then you can also put a buyout rate in there if you wanted to do that. You would turn that column on. So the tax concept is, well done in there too, if you need to put, your sales tax information on your buyouts. Anyway, that was a, quick. I wanted to give you an idea of how you basically are able to do your purchasing out of your bid item grid by selecting a view. We'll actually go through and we'll document all of the different columns that need to be turned on for the different views here. Okay, so if I go over to change order control, now I'm going to do my change order control, and I'm able to facilitate that function just by having different columns turned on. Okay, I don't have any change orders in this grid. One other function of the grid is that you can actually include multiple jobs. So if I come back over here I'll just go into the older area, and I'll go into the golden job, and I'll go to the budget tab. That bid items grid can be accessed here. So if I click on that, it's actually going to pull it up down here. It actually added it to my bid item grid. So now I've got the golden job in the bid item grid, and I've got the Monte Vista job in the bid item grid. So if I'm on the change order control, if I highlight that billing and check that box, bill CO, and hit enter, it's just going to bring up my change orders. And I'm just going to copy a couple of them so we don't have to type them in. But you can copy and paste your rows among your items. Now notice I'm on that view, that change order view, and that's checked, and so that's why you see nothing in here. So we just saved it. If I clear that view, remember I checked that box, there's the rest of it. Okay. So now I'm just going to look at my change orders. On my print icon, I can populate my print drop-down. I can populate this over under custom reports and forms, and I can actually print my change order requests here. Okay. And my descriptions are going to dictate this kind of stuff. I can put reports that I like to look at or that I want my project managers to be able to look at quickly in these drop-downs as well. Okay. The drop-down for the bid item grid is basically the same. The reports are the same as the budget tab. Okay. The progress billing for the schedule of values grid or progress billing grid is here, and it shares the schedule value grid or tab in the job list. So. Okay, so the same reports as we saw over there. We can actually print our change orders from here too if you wanted to. You'd have to give it a valid date range that it spanned some of those. So let's recap what we've talked about. Okay, so we can open up multiple jobs in many of the grids. Okay, and you can access the grids from the old product as well as the the new product in different ways, mainly from the .NET job list. Anybody have any questions about the stuff we've shown so far? No questions? Okay. So let's just cover the different grids that we have in your system that you have today. We have the job list. Let's go ahead and just document it. Okay, so we have the job list. We have the schedule values grid, or we'll just call it progress billing. We have the bid item grid. And the bid item grid is very different than the budgeting grid, even though they're similar. But we'll go through the differences in our next webinar between a budget concept and a bid item concept. We have the cost plus grid. We have a work order grid that you've got in your product today, and you've got a status grid. And we have time card entry. The time card entry is one that's pretty widely used, I think, and so many of you might be familiar with that. I'm still surprised at how many people I talk to that don't know that any of that stuff exists. But here's the time card entry grid. Remember your clear sort key if you use it. It's nice because you can have all your employees in there at once, or you can just filter through by highlighting your employee here. Okay? So that's, I'm going to quickly show the other grids for those of you who haven't seen them. Generally, you can access the grids from the icons and the job list. So if I want to go into the cost plus grid, I can click on that. If you have any time and material jobs, this functionality is extremely capable. So there's a lot of functionality on this grid, and we'll cover this grid in one of the hour sessions. And it's basically you can create transactions from this grid. You can do your time card entry from this grid. If you enter a time card here, it shows up in your time card entry. If you enter a time card entry, in the time card entry, it shows up here. So if I show you the columns that are available in this grid, it's very comprehensive. We probably spent a year and a half developing this. So we put a lot of concepts in there. The schedule of values grid. You have a question?
I do. And any of these grids should also be in the toolbox area, correct? I mean, if you add something in Toolbox, it'll show up in Cost Plus. If you add something in Cost Plus, it shows up in Toolbox.
Yeah, the exact same database. We call the .NET side our TimeSuite side. We do have a beta version that includes basically all the transactions. It's an alpha version, actually. It includes all the transactions. It includes, a menu system that looks just like this. So it's very much the same. You can open up both products side by side and do things in them. If you bring in the TimeSuite product, and I'll show you guys that, I can show you that. But everything is self-contained. Like you're accessing the grids from within the traditional toolbox, they show up outside. If you're accessing the grids from within the TimeSuite product, notice how this is inside the menu. If I try to move it out, it's not going to go out. It stays in there. Yet the .NET grids, you can move them out. So they can be very much outside of the product. See that?
Right.
In the TimeSuite side, it's not that way. It actually is within the product. Grid, Let me go through the other grids. Okay, so my job list. Okay, so this job status grid, I can pull it up, and this is a little bit older .NET grid. It's one of the first ones we did, and so its functionality is a little different. So it's a little bit older version. We do have a newer version of it. We haven't released it. But you can see that on the status grid, you can project your profitability in your projects, and this ties right into your summary contracts for your over-under billings. But here's your budget information, and then your commitments, and then actual, and then to complete. This, you should really never be changing your adjusted budget to do your over-under billings. You should be changing your job status, which is just a level beyond the budget, so you preserve your budgets. Okay, so that's probably not the best example job because we don't have much going on, but that's the job status grid. The job status grid can also be accessed from the job status tab in the grid. So if I go over here to the job status tab and I click status, it's going to open up that same grid, except it'll open it for the golden job. The job status grid, let's go bring it up here. There it is. So there's the job status grid for the newer grids. This is the only one that's left in this version, but so this grid is good. Like the cost control webinars, we talk about how you project your jobs and your projects. If you're labor intensive, you'd project your labor over here separately from your equipment, and you would use, I'm just going to touch on this, you would use this worksheet that you get from this projected column. So for your cost control, you'll get your foreman or superintendent or project managers to come in and put a percentage here. So notice we have 15, 30, 95. Those are the percentages we bolted in here. So if we go 25, 35, 100, and hit save, and then refresh over here, it's going to recognize those percentages. See 25, 35, and 100. And then those give us an hours variance that we can give back to the field. And so this is their accountability reporting for labor. This function serves to feed our summary contracts something reasonable with respect to what's going on in the field. So here we've gone to 248,000 total estimated cost, and our summary contracts picks that up, picks up our job status numbers. So if I come over here to our summary contracts, and click the job status. This we're on terminal services on our file server, so sometimes these dialogues don't view correctly, but yours will be fine. So the 248 here is 248,032. See that? Ties right into the summary of contracts, 248,032. So the status drives the over-under billings. So coming up with reasonable estimates on your summary contracts is really it's a key, and this job status really supports that. Okay. So also, let's just go back over here. So all the different grids are accessible from the old product. So the budget, you get the bid items, the schedule of values, the icons over on this side. If you click on that, it'll bring up the schedule of values grid for that job. Notice we have two jobs open here now in this progress billing grid or schedule of values. Cost plus, the icon's right here, brings up the cost plus grid concept. If we pull up a different job and go to the cost plus and click the cost plus, we'll end up with two jobs in that grid. Okay. Job status, I already showed you that, and so those are the concepts. The one grid we haven't talked about is the work order grid, and it's accessed from the work order system. Now, if your system doesn't bring up this .NET grid when you click on work order list, that's because under utilities, preferences, and screens, that's where you turn that on and off. So here we have our bid item grid, and everything's extended at this point. These are older versions, and we need to update this dialog, but this is where you turn on your payroll time card entry for .NET. If I turn that off, I'll get the old time card entry. If I check it out, I get the .NET time card entry. Okay, work orders are right here. Okay, so let's kind of recap what we talked about. These are the different grids we have that are released into your system. And basically, there's a lot of functionality in each of them, and we'll go through. Today, we just wanted to talk about the mechanics of each of the grids, because the mechanics are very much the same in all of them. You know, whether I'm in the schedule of values grid, you know, creating views and populating reports and turning on and off icons, you know, just sorting to filtering, all of that kind of stuff. The filtering, some of the grids are a little bit further behind than other grids, like this time and billing, which is basically your cost plus. We just renamed it time and billing for this database. This top column is an entry column. That is in the next version that hopefully we'll release before too long. It's actually a filter column. So we moved away from the data entry in the top row to a filter column. Some of the older, they're smaller grids. For example, we have the billing designation rates in .NET, and that'll bring up this dialog. And those are all data entry, and at some point we'll go through and make them filter grids, filtering concepts. But at this point, they're not there. It's a little different concept. So for the most part, the concepts are very much the same with a few twists, a few exceptions. Let's come back over here. Another thing we're going to do is we're going to identify some different, in this document, we'll identify the layouts of the different grids. So if we rename this grid bid item, okay, and I'm going to come in here and paste okay. It didn't paste cleanly, actually. I pasted it from the Mac over here, so I'm going to go edit, undo. But let me paste it from this side over here. Okay, so one thing we did, hold on, I'm doing it from a different screen. See, edit and undo. Okay, so here we have our standard view, and with the different columns we turn on for like a standard estimate. So we'll document all of these concepts in this webinar series. So if you say, okay, I want to do purchasing for a sub, these are the suggested columns that we want to turn on. So let's just, well, we're out of time, and we're going to stay to an hour on these webinars. So it's quite a bit to cover in each of the different grids. If you don't do time and material billing, I'd still encourage you to, you know, sit through that, because there's quite a bit of functionality in there, and you can use, for example, the cost plus or time and billing grid for other functionality. It's a place where you can see all your transactions. that grid can be tied into work orders, just like the bid item grids can be tied into work orders. So you have jobs that tie into your bid item grids and your work order grid and your schedule values, and then you have your work order grid that ties into the bid items and the cost plus. So there's quite a bit of functionality there. You may never use it, but the exposure to it I think is pretty good. So here's some examples of the different layouts for a production estimate, change order control, that kind of thing. Okay? And so make sure you email Nyman a Google email address, and he'll add you so that you can go to your Google Drive and you can see these, you can actually have access to this file. Okay? But that's it for now. And anybody have any questions before we go?
Nope.
Don't think so.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
You bet. Bye.
Thanks, sir.
Bye.
You bet. Bye.